So I'm a classical history nerd. I'll read and watch everything that has anything to do with history. It's a movie, a book, an article, whatever you name it. If you have a pretty cool story from history, I'm all ears. Now you gotta admit that even though you may not be that much into history, but you still find it fascinating, and that is totally normal. Now today we're going to talk about why is that the case. Now because of the point in history that we live in, if you are interested in history, this is a great time to be alive. We have abundant resources, technology, they can trace our history all the way back to the beginnings. But not only that, we know a lot of things about other species and their history, let alone our own. Now, because of all of that, you will be forgiven if you think that this is a whole novelty concept, that people just suddenly started being fascinated by history and started exploring. But that's actually not the case. See, if we look back into history, we're gonna find that people have always been doing this. Being intrigued by history is a concept that British antiquarian William Camden called a back-looking curiosity, and he lived in the late 1500s and early 1600s. If we go even further back, you're going to find instances that entire cultures were influenced by other cultures who were before them. Rome is a pretty good example because Romans were pretty fascinated about Greek culture, and that's why they inherited a lot of things like their pantheon, infrastructure, architecture, culture in general. So much so that a certain Roman historians complain that it feels like the Rome was conquered by Greece, not the other way around. And these type of examples are present throughout the world. Now, one of the reasons why we are so curious is because, well, we are curious by nature. We want to know about things. We want to know about the future, what we're gonna achieve in the next day. If we are talking about a personal level, if we are talking about the civilizations, we've been exploring the whole planet, and now we're going to go even beyond. We want to explore the solar system. We're going to go even beyond that. We're going to hit the next star. But that also goes backwards because we want to know what happened in our history. How do we get to this point? We want to know what happened 100 years ago, a millennia ago, 10,000 years ago, and so on. And this is very important because it can teach us some really important lesson, because we can see what were the struggles that our ancestors have, and then in the most cases those are pretty much the struggles that we have. And if we can replicate some of the solutions that they had, maybe we can improve our own comfort of life. Now the second one is so-called escapism. And it's pretty prevalent today because life is stressful, especially these days. And sometimes when we are reading about the past times, about the history, or watching a documentary, we do find ourselves imagining being there and living some other lives and thinking that life will be a lot easier at that point. Now that is exactly one of the reasons why you're so drawn to fantasy, like the video that I made a couple weeks ago. And that's basically we're building on our history, because when we explore our history now, we want to imagine other worlds, how they will look like, and then imagine ourselves in that world. Now another one is the fallen empire syndrome, and that's pretty much the switch from a country having a really important role in global affairs going to not so much. And the history is full of these types. As we are prideful, we often associate ourselves with our own nation, and we want it to be better, which is a good thing. And then often we will look back into history and we will find a time in history when our country, or the country at a time, was much more important, and we will wish that that is the case today. Now this can be a double-edged sword because, again, history is full of examples when certain peoples or certain groups of people abuse this feeling and they push themselves to the power, promising better times or promising they gotta get it back to what it used to be. Because of this, it's really important to remember that history is not black and white. Now to simplify this, just simply imagine history being a basket full of fruit. And in that basket, you're going to find a lot of different fruits. Some of those you like, some of those you don't. So what some people will do, they will just pick and choose the one they like, and they will just regard that as a history. But that is actually not true. See, history is a package deal. It is what it is. Good things and bad things go hand in hand because that's who we are, that's how the past was. So if you think that your history, or the history of your country, or the history of the civilization in general is only a good thing or only a bad thing, you're wrong. it's both. Now, the last one that I want to touch on is the genealogy, and that is something that became especially popular in the last several years. Now, one of the reasons why it's so popular is because it's so accessible. You have a number of companies that are offering their services to anyone, especially in the United States. So you can get tested and you can find out who your ancestors were, or get it pretty close, which in of itself, it is pretty interesting and fascinating, because as I mentioned before, the first history that you want to uncover, then you should, is your own. Now, to bring a conclusion to this, history is great. It is amazing, and you should get into it if you already are not. There's a lot of things that you can learn about other people, other civilization, your culture, yourself at the bottom line. But you do have to remember, history is a double-edged sword, and you have to understand history the way the history is. Not black and white. There's a lot of shades there, good and bad, pretty much like your life is. Now, you can interpret history the way you want, but just remember, if you receive a lie and you believe in a lie, at the end of the day, you're the one who's being lied to. All right, so this one was another short or longer content. I usually make short videos, but I'm gonna try to make more of these a little bit longer content, and I'm gonna go to some even bigger projects. If you do like this, and if you wanna see more videos like this, I would generally appreciate if you can like and subscribe. If this is not something you're interested in, that's fine too. And leave a comment down below. I really want to know, what do you think about this? What do you think? What's the problem and how people perceive history these days? Or is there anything that we can do to change that? And I will be really curious to know any of those. So hopefully I will see you soon with some more content. Thank you.